Well, I'm joined now by Tony Diver. He's a reporter on The Telegraph, and he is the one who broke the story about Downing Street partying on the eve of Prince Philip's funeral. Thank you for joining us, Tony. It was a great scoop that you had there. And in a sense, since that story, the whole Partygate thing has reignited. In the run-up to you publishing that story, in a way the story had gone a bit quiet, the long-running saga. You reignited it.
Yeah, I think that's right. Obviously, all of these parties have different reasons that we care about them. Previously, we've heard about parties where the Prime Minister himself has attended. We've had a lot of argument about that. There have been parties where it was just staff parties in the press office. I think the reason why the story that we wrote, getting up a couple of weeks ago now, ignited the issue so much is that it came the night before Prince Philip's funeral, where the Queen sat alone mourning her husband. And I think that had additional resonance for the public. I think people looked at that and sort of identified with the royal family who were making their own sacrifices. And that made them even more angry with Number 10, even if the Prime Minister himself wasn't there.
Now, The Telegraph went very hard on that story, but since then, rather a number of people have come out, not just Telegraph journalists, but in a lot of papers, commentators now saying, look, this is getting ridiculous. Why are we tying ourselves in knots about whether or not the Prime Minister was ambushed by cakes? You know, there are much bigger issues in the country. Do you think the Prime Minister is just playing for time and that this has been quite a successful strategy and that the longer it goes on, the more farcical some of it looks and the greater his chances of survival?
Well, you know, Isabel, having done it for so long, that governments always use inquiries as a way of trying to kick things into the long grass, because you announce an inquiry which is looking into the facts. You say, well, now the inquiry started, we don't want to prejudice it, so we can't talk about it for the time being. Then when the inquiry comes out, you say, well, the inquiry's already concluded, so we're not going to say any more about it, and we're all going to try and move on. And then often the government frames the reporting of events like this around inquiries. I mean, as Tom's just said in the Downing Street briefing this morning, Number 10 said that they hadn't been involved in influencing the Met Police on their decision to ask that elements of the Sue Gray inquiry are removed when it's published. So I'm not sure we can blame Number 10 directly for that, but certainly it looks quite convenient for the Prime Minister, doesn't it? That
it certainly does.
If we ever get any of the information about what was going on in Downing Street, the real nitty-gritty detail, we'll certainly be waiting quite a while for it now. We're not going to have it in the heat of the storm, which is where we are now.
Yes, indeed. Now, also in The Telegraph, your columnist, the editor of The Spectator, Fraser Nelson, stated as fact that there are now at least 54 Tory MPs who are ready to put their letters in. That's letters that go in to the backbench Conservative committee in a way that would trigger a confidence vote in the Prime Minister. I was a bit surprised The Telegraph didn't go bigger on that. There's been a lot of speculation as to whether the letters are anywhere, or rather the people in numbers are anywhere near 54 that are willing to do that. Is that what you've been picking up as well from your contacts?
Well, these things are always difficult to say because there are always MPs who say they're going to put their letters in but actually aren't. And similarly, MPs that quietly put their letters in but publicly are still expressing support for the Prime Minister. Fraser's obviously a columnist, I'm a reporter. He talks to different people than I do. But my feeling is that actually the real moment of danger for the Prime Minister is kind of past now. It was the night of the pork pie plot and all of that drama, which I think felt like the most difficult moment for him. Whether or not there are now more MPs who are quietly sitting on letters they're going to submit after the inquiry is published, we don't know. I mean, the only person who really knows how many letters there are is Sir Graham Brady.
Yes, indeed. And just to be clear, I don't think that there are anywhere near 54 right now, but there are an awful lot of MPs waiting in the wings. And actually, they were waiting for the Sue Gray report, which now may not come. So that may have bought the Prime Minister considerable amount more time. Just very quickly, Tony, on the national insurance rise, people may be wondering what is the link between this and Partygate. And it is that the Prime Minister is in a very weak position and a lot of MPs are very uncomfortable about that planned tax rise. Where do you think this is going?
Well, the government's been very clear that they're not going to scrap the national insurance hike. MPs and ministers that have come out this week have said that it's not going to happen. We know the Treasury is considering a variety of measures to try and make the cost of living crisis easier for people. It feels like it's possibly still on the table. The government expended so much political capital putting this through in the first place. I think it would feel like an enormous U-turn on what was eventually a manifesto pledge. If you see what I'm saying, I think it would feel like a huge climb down if the government did that. But I don't know. I mean, as you say, Boris Johnson's very weak at the moment. If that's the price MPs give him for their continued support, then perhaps he'll be forced to.
Indeed, and very interesting dynamics there with Rishi Sunak, of course, the Chancellor, having led that policy, potentially going to be very humiliated if the Prime Minister scraps it. And Rishi Sunak, of course, being one of the main rivals for the job. Thank you very much, Tony Diver, for joining us, and well done on that fantastic scoop.